Welcome back everyone, it is Mike from Mana Hoarders. In this video we are bringing you a commander deck tech for an Is It commander, Galazeth Prismari. You can cast Galazeth for 2, a blue and a red. You get a 3/4 legendary dragon with flying. Whenever Galazeth enters, we get a treasure token. Also, artifacts we control can tap and add 1 mana of any color. However, we can only spend this mana to cast instants and sorceries. Before we dive into the deck, let's go over a few key points. First up, the final price for this build came in at $69.67. This does include the price of our commander and all of our lands. Now, do bear in mind, these prices will vary greatly depending on the quality of the cards you purchase, the vendor you use, and a variety of other factors. In terms of power level, I would rate this deck at around a 7 out of 10 on the power scale. Our commander loves artifacts. We included plenty of them and plenty of ways to generate more artifacts as the game progresses. Now we also included some pretty big spells, so when we have all these artifacts on the battlefield, we can tap them to modify or enhance the abilities of our instants and sorceries. And last but not least, if our giant spells aren't quite doing the trick, we can turn our artifacts into creatures to overwhelm our opponents with a very imposing board. Now let's go ahead and dive into the deck. First up are our artifacts. Guild Globe, whenever it enters we can draw a card. We can also pay 2, tap it and sacrifice to add 2 mana of 2 different colors. Ichor Wellspring, whenever it enters or whenever it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we get to draw a card. Mycosynth Wellspring, whenever it enters or is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we can search all over for a basic, reveal it, put it into our hand, and then shuffle. Prismatic Lens can tap to give us a colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it to give us 1 mana of any color. Servo Schematic, whenever it enters or is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we get a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Thought Vessel gives us no maximum hand size and gives us a colorless. And Traveler's Amulet, we can pay 1 and sack it to search our library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into our hand, and then shuffle. Moving on to our enchantments. Double Vision. Whenever we cast our first instant or sorcery spell each turn, we can copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. Efficient Construction. Whenever we cast an artifact spell, we get a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token. Metallurgic Summonings. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we get an XX colorless construct artifact creature token, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. Mirrodin Besieged. Whenever it enters, we can choose Mirren or Phyrexian. Whenever we cast an artifact spell, we can get another Mirror artifact creature token, or at the beginning of our end step, we draw a card and then discard a card. Teferi's Ageless Insight. If we will draw a card except for the first one we draw on each of our draw steps, we can draw 2 cards instead. And Trail of Evidence. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we will investigate. That means we will put a colorless clue artifact creature token on the battlefield. We can pay 2 and sacrifice these to draw a card. Moving on to our sorceries. Double Cast. Whenever we cast our next instant or sorcery spell, we can copy that spell. Fanning the Flames will deal X damage to target creature or player. We can also buy it back for 3. Fight with Fire deals 5 damage to target creature, but if we kick it, we can deal 10 damage divided as we choose among any number of targets. Haze of Rage gives creatures we control +1/+0, but it does have Storm and we can buy it back for 2. Illuminate deals X damage to target creature. If the red kicker cost was paid, it deals that much damage to that creature's controller, but if the blue kicker cost was paid, we will draw X cards. The Perfect Mana Sink, Mind Spring, will allow us to draw X cards. Molten Disaster has Kicker. If it was kicked, it has Split Second, and it deals X damage to each creature without flying and each player. As an additional cost, to cast Pirate's Pillage, we will discard a card, and then we will draw 2 and create 2 colorless treasure artifact creature tokens. River's Rebuke, we can return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. Sleep will allow us to tap all creatures target player controls, then those creatures don't untap during that player's next untap step. Solve the equation, we can search our library for an instant or sorcery, reveal it, put it into our hand, and then shuffle. And Thought Cast will cost 1 less for each artifact we control. It will allow us to draw 2 cards. We will be including 1 Planeswalker in this build, Saheeli Sublime Artificer. Her passive ability is absolutely amazing. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. This means with our commander on the battlefield, all of these servos can tap to give us mana to cast even bigger instants and sorceries. Moving on to our instants, Blink of an Eye. We can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, but if it was kicked, we can also draw a card. Capsize can return target permanent to its owner's hand, and we can buy it back for 3. Comet Storm has multi-kicker 1. We can choose any target, then choose any other target for each time this spell was kicked, and it deals X damage to each of them. Depths of Desire will bounce target creature at its owner's hand and create a treasure token. Dramatic Reversal, we can untap all non-land permanents we control. We can use Icy Blast to tap X target creatures at instant speed. Into the Royal can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and if it was kicked, we will draw. Lazotep Plating, we can amass 1, and it gives us and permanents we control hexproof until end of turn. Masterful Replication, we can choose 1, create 2 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature tokens, or choose an artifact we control, and each other artifact we control becomes a copy of that until end of turn. Negate will counter any pesky target non-creature spells. Opt, we can scry 1 and then draw 1. Spell Contortion has multi-kicker 1, we can counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, and then we draw a card for each time it was kicked. Moving on to our creatures, we do have some legends helping out our commander. Brutaclad Telkor Engineer gives creature tokens we control haste, and at the beginning of combat on our turn we get a 2/1 blue mirror artifact creature token. Then we can choose a token we control, and if we do, each other token we control becomes a copy of that until end of turn. Captain Lannery Storm has haste, and whenever she attacks we get a treasure token, and whenever we sack a treasure she gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Gadrak the Crown Scourge is a 5/4 dragon with flying, can't attack her unless we control 4 or more artifacts, but at the beginning of our end step we create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. One of my favorite commanders, Niv Mizzet Perun. It can't be countered, has flying. Whenever we draw a card, we'll deal 1 damage to any target, and whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, we will draw a card. A new commander from Strixhaven, Rutha Mercurial Artist. We can pay 2, return Rutha to our hand, and if we do, we will copy target instant or sorcery spell we control and choose new targets for the copy. And Sai Master Thopterist. Whenever we cast an artifact spell, we'll get a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token. We also pay 1 in a blue, sack 2 artifacts to draw a card. And for our not-so-legendary creatures, Archmaid Emeritus. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we can draw a card. Chief of the Foundry. Other artifact creatures we control get +1/+1. Efreet Flame Painter has double strike. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we may cast target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell will be put into the graveyard, we will exile it instead. Electrostatic Field deals 1 damage to each opponent whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. Firebrand Archer, whenever we cast a non-creature spell, deals 1 damage to each opponent. Gutter Snipe, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, deals 2 damage to each opponent. Iron Mirror can tap to give us a red mana. Loyal Apprentice, at the beginning of combat on our turn, if we control our commander, we get a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. That token gains haste until end of turn. Master of Ethereum gives artifacts we control +1/+1, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts we control. Memnite is a nice 0-cost artifact creature. So is Ornithopter, but this has flying. Quicksmith Genius. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, we can discard a card, and if we do, we can draw. Reckless Fireweaver. Whenever an artifact enters under our control, he'll deal 1 damage to each opponent. Riddlesmith. Whenever we cast an artifact, we can draw a card, and if we do, we'll discard. Sage of Latnam. We can tap it, sacrifice an artifact to draw a card. Silvermere can tap to give us a blue mana. Thermal Alchemist. We can tap it to deal 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we can untap it. Tribute Mage. Whenever it enters, we can search our library for an artifact with CMC 2, reveal it, put it into our hand, and shuffle. And Windrider Wizard. Whenever we cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, we can draw a card, and if we do, we'll discard. And last but not least, Wing Splicer. Whenever it enters, we get a 3/3 colorless golem, and golems we control have flying. And last up is our mana base. We are going to be keeping things very basic, with 18 basic islands and 17 basic mountains. And just like that, we've reached the end of this Commander Deck Tech. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment down below. Let us know what commanders you would like to see us build around in the future. We hope you're as excited for Strixhaven as we are, and as always, we really appreciate the support.